Swoop here. It's the weekend after St. Patrick's Day and I've bought a lot of very cheap cabbage. So this is the weekend I make one of my favorite paleo foods, sauerkraut. So let's get to it. So you wash your cabbage, take off the outer leaves and save them. I'll show you why later. Cut it into manageable pieces. Coring it as you go. Save the cores. Those will be useful later as well. Then you slice it into very thin slices. If you liked the smaller grate, you can run it through a grater. I never do. I like this small hand-cut size. Cut those into small pieces, the final sized pieces that you want in your sauerkraut. Dump that into a big bowl. Okay, once it's in the bowl, you bring the bowl out, and this is all one head of cabbage all cut up. You need a good bit of, and I use a natural kosher salt. Put some salt on it. Stir it around with some very clean hands. Put a little more salt on it. You're going to need a few tablespoons, or a couple of tablespoons, sorry. And you just mix it. And then you squish it. Now a lot of people will do this for about 10 minutes or 15 minutes, just squishing it. This is an important step because you need to get the juices out of the cabbage. I don't do it for a full 10 or 15 minutes. What I do is I squish it for a little bit, go do some sort of chore, come back, squish it a little bit more, and do a few more chores, come back and squish it a little bit more. Today I'm going to do a lot more squishing than I usually do because I have 4 heads of cabbage that I need to turn into kraut. Good exercise. Take out some of your frustrations. You go, "Argh!" So it's good paleo. Let's look at how much it's squished down now, compacted. I think it's ready for a jar. Normally I can fit one of these in a quart-sized mason jar for 1 head of cabbage. I'm going to be using half-gallon jars. If this doesn't fill the half-gallon jar, I'm going to do another one and then stuff it in on top. So let's see how much it'll fit in the jar. Okay, back into the sink with it. Now before we put it in the jar, I am going to, in the bottom, put a little bit of my homemade vinegar. What this does is add lactobacillus bacteria to the bottom. If you put it in on top, then it won't make it all the way down to the bottom because what we're going to be doing is compacting the cabbage into the jar. So I like to put it in the bottom, and as we compact the cabbage, it pushes it up a little bit and will infiltrate the cabbage. This will help speed up the process of making sauerkraut because you're adding extra bacteria to it. Now, you don't have to do this step. The cabbage itself has the bacteria in it and it will do it on its own, but I think this adds a little bit of flavor. It also makes it a little bit safer because of the higher acid content, and I just plain like the flavor of my homemade ale vinegar in the cabbage. Now, the bacteria that I started this vinegar with came from Bragg's cider vinegar. It's natural. It has the mother in it. All that schmutz in the bottom, can you see that? All that schmutz in the bottom is bacteria, and that is the mother that gets it all started. That's good. You don't want to throw that stuff away. It looks gross and you want to throw it away, but that's what makes the vinegar special. That is how I made my ale vinegar. I just poured some, I think this one was my lager that I used, and I simply added the bacteria to the lager, kept it open, and it turned into vinegar. And this vinegar tastes amazing. You can't buy this type of vinegar except for like 15 bucks a bottle for this. But when I make my own beer at 30 cents a bottle, why not make your own vinegar as well? Anyway, so I'm going to put some of this in first, and then we're going to stuff the cabbage in. Mix up the vinegar a little bit, get the bacteria all mixed in there. Pour just a little bit into the jar. You don't need a lot. Just a little bit. And then you just start stuffing the cabbage into the jar. Now this cabbage will probably not be enough for a half gallon because we're going to compact it and compress it. We're going to probably have to make another cabbage to put it in here. Normally one head of cabbage fits very well compacted into a quart jar. And since this is a half a gallon, I'm expecting to put pretty much 2 whole cabbages in here. It seems like it's filling up, but by the time we press it, it's going to go down quite a bit in there. Now if you notice in the bottom all this juice, don't throw that away. That's very important. You need to put that up on top of the cabbage. The cabbage has to be out of the air. So that's why we squishing, excuse me, squishing the cabbage to get the juice out. Then we pour the juice right back in. First time I made this, I made a mistake and threw out the juice before I realized I really needed it. Don't do that. Okay, so we have it filled up. Let me show you what's going to happen here. Okay, got the cabbage. I'm going to take the plunger I usually use with my meat grinder, but you can use a jar or whatever you want, and you just start packing it down. See how it's squishing down? We're going to have to put in some more cabbage. If you don't have any more cabbage to put in here and you just want to use one jar, that's fine. What you can do is after you pour in the juice, you take your old cabbage leaves that you pulled off the top, you put it on top, and you press it down a little bit. You put your cores on top of that to help create a press and hold the cabbage down under the fluids. Anything that is left in the air will turn gray and nasty and you won't like it. So you always cover it up. Look, even without the extra juice, you can see how it's starting to get juicy in here. So that's good, that's what you want. I'm gonna keep pressing it down, pressing it down. Tell you what, let's pretend that we're going to stop here. I'm not going to, I'm going to load it up with a lot more, but let's pretend we're going to stop here. Okay, I'm going to add in the last of the juice and whatever scrappings. I'm not going to clean up too well because I'm going to be making this all day. One more good pressing down. See how the juice is on top? Got plenty of juice in there. I'm going to take some of this to make a little, little lid for the sauerkraut. A real kraut jar will have a little plate to use this with. Then I'm going to take a core and put it on top. That'll help hold the sauerkraut under the liquid. Put the lid on top and screw it on. Now see how the core itself holds the cabbage down in here and keeps the juice on top? That's what you want, because the stuff in the air will turn gray and get nasty. You don't want to do that. Now what you can do is keep this cabbage at room temperature for about 4 days to a week, depending on the temperature of the room. It's fairly cool in here being winter, so I'll probably keep it out for a full week. Then you can put it in the fridge and start eating it at that point. It'll be sauerkraut, and this is really good sauerkraut. Tastes nothing like the stuff in the stores. Matter of fact, it's the only sauerkraut my wife will use. I eat it raw. I also put it on top of things like pork and cook it. It's good that way as well. Use it for whatever way you normally use sauerkraut. Put it on your hot dogs or whatever. If you're not paleo, for paleo you wouldn't do that. But just eat it raw like you'd use a coleslaw. It's very, very good. And it is a probiotic. It will help your intestines, and also because it's cabbage, with all that roughage, it will help with your digestion. So this is something really, really good to have. Now, I don't put it in the refrigerator. I don't have the room, so I just keep it down in the basement where it's really cool, and I've never had trouble with it. It lasts for a long time. So today will be enough cabbage probably to get me down into summer. But whenever I'm cooking cabbage and I don't want to cook too much and have some left over, I just make some sauerkraut, put it into a smaller size jar, and then put, and save that into the fridge for whatever food I want to eat it, or just eating it raw. So that's how you make my sauerkraut.